All anyone wants to talk about between race weeks at the moment is money. Budget caps have been the center of discussions for weeks now, but the new money-related issue is with driver contracts. The teams are looking to cap how much drivers can earn, but unsurprisingly, the drivers are fighting back. Let's get you up to date on everything that's happening right now. Driver salary caps aren't exactly a new story. In fact, it isn't even a story that started this season. This began in 2020. The agreement to impose budget caps in F1 was signed in late 2019. It's important to understand that a team budget cap and a driver salary cap are two very different things. The budget cap only applies to the performance and operation side of a team, with many exemptions to the rules. These include personal travel costs, marketing activities, employee bonuses, property and utility costs, human resources and finance departments, as well as the salaries of the race drivers, the reserve driver, and the salaries of the three highest paid employees. When the budget cap was introduced, the plan was to curtail the skyrocketing cost of running an F1 team. The gap between the top teams and the bottom teams has become so large that the sport was losing its competitiveness and becoming too predictable. In 2020, Mercedes spent nearly $500 million on their F1 team, while Haas spent $80 million. F1 is never going to be a level playing field, but that kind of gap is like giving Usain Bolt a 5-second head start at the 100-meter final in the Olympics. Unless something goes catastrophically wrong, no one is ever going to catch him. Now that the budget cap is in place, the teams have been looking for other ways to control costs. So in 2020, after the budget cap was signed, the teams started looking at their next big expense, which is driver salaries. While driver contracts are kept private, information always gets leaked about the rough size of the contract. The biggest earners are obviously the two biggest names in the sport at the moment: Max Verstappen on $55 million a year and Lewis Hamilton on $40 million a year. The plan to apply a salary cap for drivers would give each team a pool of money to spend on both drivers. The number that is being considered is $30 million. So you could either pay both your drivers $15 million. If one driver is more successful or more experienced than the other, then the teams could split it $20 million and $10 million. They can do whatever they want, as long as they don't overspend that $30 million mark. That cap will have to include bonuses as well to avoid the teams finding easy workarounds. For drivers like Max and Lewis, this would mean huge pay cuts in the future. They are only one part of the Red Bull and Mercedes team though. At Red Bull, Sergio Perez also earns around $8 million a year, taking Red Bull's salary spending on its two drivers to about $63 million a year. There are a lot of intricate contractual details here that would need to be worked around. Red Bull have a contract with Max Verstappen that says they're going to pay him that much money until the end of the 2027 season. Their contract will be binding, so they can't just cut $30 million from Max's salary to get under the salary cap. What this likely means is that any cap will only come in from the start of the 2028 season. Unsurprisingly, Raymond Vermeulen, Max Verstappen's manager, who takes a cut from every deal he delivers to Max Verstappen, be it a new mega contract with Red Bull or an endorsement deal with a personal sponsor, is strongly against drivers being imposed a pay cut by F1. Total idiocy, Vermeulen told Dutch daily De Telegraaf. Drivers increase the value of a team, and to then give whoever you buy that value from, the driver, a limit, it would turn the world upside down. Take a look at the facts. A Grand Prix came to the Netherlands thanks to Max, argued Vermeulen. Zandvoort pays an annual amount to FOM to organize the race, a large part of which is divided among the teams. So they benefit from that. It would then be very strange if you were to limit only the driver's earnings model. Obviously, Max's manager isn't the best person to take an opinion from. He's going to be extremely biased thanks to the millions of dollars he makes off Max's contract. But his point is interesting. The drivers do bring a lot to the sport. In fact, you could argue they bring everything to the sport. Every sport needs its star performers to attract publicity, to feed from grassroots level a desire to aspire to replicate such feats. On top of that, money always attracts interest. There is a reason F1 drivers' new contracts are always huge news, because as human beings, we love to hear how much money they make. Supporters of F1 driver salary capping will quickly point to the success in other major sports, where athlete cost caps have been introduced, and where a sensible check on athlete costs have been legislated, enabling team franchise owners to draft budgets with fiscal responsibility. But there is one other very significant and fundamental difference between Formula 1 and ball sports, which is overlooked by many. In motorsport, the reliance upon sponsorship is far greater than for any ball sport, because racing teams don't own the stadiums in which they race. This means they can't earn money from ticket sales, food and drink, hospitality packages, or renting the stadium out for other events. That is a huge revenue stream that's completely missing from the sport. Hamilton said as much in 2020 when the cap was first discussed. "I don't think that the drivers here are the stars of the sport," said Hamilton. "They're the ones who bring their brands, and their reputation helps elevate the sport and help them travel around the world. If you look at other sports, there have been salary caps," Hamilton acknowledged. "I think the one difference is that in those places, the individuals own their image in the many areas, so they can try and maximize their image elsewhere. But this sport controls pretty much the driver's image." Talks have recently shifted up a gear though, and have been actively happening over the past few weeks. As they have, the story has been thrown back into the media spotlight, and Fernando Alonso has taken the opportunity to say his piece as well. He specifically angled his argument at the increases in workload the drivers are getting, specifically in relation to media commitments. "I don't think it's needed. Drivers have always been outside this topic, and I think the drivers, they're using more and more to promote Formula 1. We do more and more events. We are more in contact with the fans. They're asking more and more from us, and they are benefiting from that. So we should be outside from that cap. It's very complicated." It isn't too surprising that the drivers are against the salary cap. It is, of course, their earnings that will be affected. Part of the problem here is that many teams would have to make salary cuts to get under the cap. The budget caps for the development of cars may have meant that the teams aren't able to spend as much, but it didn't directly lead to any pay cuts we know of among staff members. While the drivers may be against it, the team bosses seem to be very in favor of the change. This is interesting, as in the past, team bosses have been incredibly supportive of what the drivers want, but apparently this is where they draw the line. When it comes to the team finances, they have to think about their own bosses, the investors. Mattia Binotto spoke on the subject of driver salary caps after Monaco. "We understand the importance to try somehow to cap the overall expenses. Obviously, there's not only the 3 top key personnel in the team, there are not only the drivers, there is the engine and the power unit as well, for which there'll be a budget cap in the future. So we are discussing it. There's not a straightforward solution, especially for a driver's salary cap, but no doubt we're discussing it and trying to understand what can be a solution. This is never going to be a simple issue, and it definitely won't have a simple solution. It's likely to be an ongoing discussion for at least the rest of the season, if not longer. Remember, this started in 2020 and hasn't really moved anywhere in the 2 years since then until now. Alpine boss Otmar Safnauer suggested the drivers' salaries be put under the same umbrella as the rest of the performance-related budget cap. "I'm in favor of adding that underneath a global cap so the teams can trade off driver skill with updates," he said. "Ultimately, both things bring performance on track, and I think for us to have the latitude to be able to trade that off is probably the right thing." This was a suggestion McLaren's Andreas Seidel believes has merit, saying, "Our position is everything which is performance relevant should be considered to be in a kind of cap or allowance, and that's why we're open for that discussion as well." Whatever the teams decide, it's likely that more cost-saving measures will be coming to Formula 1. We see your comments on these videos about cost caps, and there is a very obvious divide in the opinions of fans. Many of you are arguing for a removal of the cap, and many of you can see the good it is doing. Whatever happens, some people are going to be upset, and as things are going, it looks like the drivers might be the ones who are left most disappointed. How do you feel about a driver salary cap? Which side of the argument are you on? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Until we see you next time, drive safe and bye-bye.